The Vicious Circle of Sports Injuries, an analysis of 165 athletics athletes over a 39-week follow-up using Markov chains. Published in BMJ Open Sports and Exercise Medicine in June 2025. Let's take a closer look at the article. Injury risk can have many definitions and interpretations. In simple terms, it expresses the probability of a healthy athlete to sustain a new injury at a given point or period in time. In order to understand why injuries occur, scientists usually look for risk factors. These risk factors are characteristics of the athlete whose presence may indicate that the risk of injury is higher than usual. Many studies in various sports, including athletics, have shown that a major risk factor for sustaining a new injury at a given season is the occurrence of an injury during the previous season. However, this is a more static understanding of the risk between two seasons. So far, it is not well understood how each sequential injury may influence the risk of subsequent injuries. Does the accumulation of injuries predispose the athlete to ever-increasing risks for future injuries? To understand how injuries occur, we need to appreciate that the health status of athletes is not binary, but more like a spectrum. To facilitate the study of the spectrum, scientists typically break it down to four categories: complete health, injury symptoms which however do not affect the participation to the sport and athletes can maintain the same level of training and competition, injury symptoms which allow a decreased level of participation, and finally, injury symptoms which do not allow the athlete to practice sports. The last two categories consist the so-called time-loss injuries, since they reduce more or less the time athletes spend training or competing. Since athletes can change their health status within this spectrum many times in a period, it is important to understand the patterns leading to time-loss injuries. Specifically, we can ask whether the risk of a time-loss injury is greater to the athletes that have already some injury symptoms, yet without any influence on their training, compared to the athletes that are healthy. With the aim to reduce the risk of injuries in sports, we need to understand better the athlete's future health status according to their current health status and injury history. So, the two objectives of this study were, first, to explore the risk of injury according to the number of previous injuries, and second, to explore the risk of the athlete's health status to progress according to its current impact on sports participation. To answer these two objectives, we used a dataset from a randomized controlled trial in athletics called PrevAthle. We included only the 165 athletes with no missing data during a 39-week follow-up. We constructed Markov chain models to estimate the probability of transitioning from a healthy status to an injury status, which reflected the risk of injury. Let's see how a Markov chain can be modeled and what it represents. Let's take a hypothetical example of a cohort consisting of 4 athletes over 9 weeks. Each week, the athletes reported in a binary question whether they were healthy or injured. These two are the states of the model. The arrows represent the transitions between two consecutive states. For two states, like health and injury, we can identify 4 unique transitions: from a healthy state to a healthy state, from a healthy state to an injury one, from an injury state to an injury one, and from an injury state to a healthy state. For each athlete, we can count the number of transitions of each category. In our example, the counts of transitions are displayed with 2x2 matrices, where on the left there is the starting state, healthy or injured, and on the top the ending state, again healthy or injured. Each number counts how many times the particular transition has been found in the weekly data of each athlete. Then we can add element-wise the matrices of each athlete. And now we can calculate the probability of each transition. In our example, out of the 20 times that athletes were in a healthy state, 15 times they remained in a healthy state and only 5 times they transitioned to an injury state. Similarly, out of the 12 times that athletes were found in an injury state, 42% they transitioned back to a healthy state and 58% they remained in the injury state. Now, With the transition matrix of probabilities, we can model the Markov chain. Let's see how Markov chains answered to our two objectives. Regarding the first objective, the probability of transitioning from a healthy to an injury state, which reflects the risk of injury, was 2.7% for the first injury, but increased to more than 5% for the second, third, and fourth injuries. These results indicated that the more injuries an athlete sustains, the more likely it is to get injured again, leading to a form of a vicious circle. This can be resembled to a domino effect. Concerning the second objective, we found that the risk to sustain a time-loss injury the following week was different if the athlete was healthy or already experiencing some injury symptoms, which however did not affect athletic participation. Specifically, experiencing some injury symptoms led to a 5 times higher risk to progress to a time-loss injury compared to being healthy. This was similar to a snowball effect, where seemingly minor injury complaints show a higher risk of increasing in severity if not properly managed early. Collectively, our findings suggest that athletes' health in the sport of athletics may follow a vicious loop which spirals down. As minor complaints appear, the risk for time-loss injuries increases, and as injuries accumulate, the risk of entering another loop increases as well. Based on our findings, we can suggest that every injury should be taken into consideration and managed appropriately, as each injury can negatively influence the risk of subsequent injuries. Minor injuries should not be neglected, since they could progress to injuries restricting participation. And finally, efforts to reduce the risk of the first as well as subsequent injuries should continue in order to slow down the vicious circle of injuries. Thank you for watching.